Okay. All right. I see we are at 6 o'clock. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the April Charter Review Committee. If everybody could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Alpert, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey there. Okay, roll call.
Yes. Casey Daly, Ward 1.
Here.
Scott Olson, Ward 2 is absent. And Ward 3, Angela Torres.
Here.
Ward 4 is vacant. And Ward 5, Andy Garcia.
Here.
And Ward 6, Ricky Van Johnson.
Here.
And Ward 7, James Albert.
Here.
Mayor's appointee, Tim Prince, is absent. And Mayor's other appointee, Letitia Briggs,
Here.
is present. And then Corey Hodges, the staff liaison, and Lise from the city attorney's office is also present. You have a quorum, and I'd also like to make a small note. There was an agenda posting error over the weekend. The agenda properly posted to the city's main website where everybody can view all of the upcoming mayor and city council meetings, including board and commission meetings, but the agenda didn't post to the page that's specifically for the charter committee. So if a member of the public navigated through our normal webpage, clicked on boards and commissions, clicked on charter committee, and was sent to an external site that did not list that we had a meeting and the agenda wasn't shown, but it was on our main site. And so I checked with the city attorney and the city clerk, and we followed all the appropriate Brown Act posting requirements. And also the agenda was posted in person at the city clerk's board on Friday, April 17th at 2 o'clock. And you have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate that. We have, I just wanted to maybe pause for a second and welcome our new appointee, Mr. Garcia. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us. So we'll do comments from committee members now. So if any fellow committee members would like to say anything, feel free. Mr. Garcia, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the group, feel free to do that as well.
First of all, I just want to thank everybody for welcoming me here to the committee. As a fairly new member to the community, I'm excited. I've only been in the community for about a year and a half, but I grew up locally here in the city of Fontana. And so I'm just looking to be part of this great team and be able to do whatever I can to contribute to hopefully help out the city even more.
All right. Thank you very much and welcome. We'll just go down the line here, Angela. Anything to say?
Hello, my name is Angela. I'm Third Ward Commissioner. I just want to say welcome. Thank you for coming, and I hope we enjoy our day. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Letty Briggs. I'm the mayor's appointee, and I also welcome everybody here this evening, and I hope we can have an open and friendly discussion tonight.
Good evening, Ricky Van Johnson. Just want to welcome Mr. Garcia to the Charter Review Committee, and thank you, audience, for coming and participating.
Hi, everyone. James Albert, 7th Ward. Just want to echo the similar comments made by committee members. Thank you all for being here.
Okay, thank you all very much. And my name is Casey Daly. I represent the 1st Ward and have the privilege of filling in tonight as vice chair. So we will go ahead and move on to public comments for items listed and not listed on the agenda. So at this point, I do have one speaker card request, and that would be Mr. Jim Mulvihill.
Thank you. At the last meeting, Casey Daly made a comment for an answer to a question, and the question was, how come surrounding jurisdictions are progressing so much faster than San Bernardino is? And I think he answered the question by saying that these other cities have general plans and they follow them. So I thought about it a little bit, and that's true. I taught city planning at Cal State for 31 years and kept track of what was going on in various jurisdictions, and our jurisdiction as well. There are some additional benefits that, say, Ontario has. It's got the airport associated with it. And Redlands is a relatively small place, mostly well-to-do people, probably better sense of community. But the point is, each one of them, I know, follows a general plan. And in brief, what a general plan is it gets all the stakeholders of the city together and provide them with data, and over the course of, in some cases, 2 or 3 years, hashes out what the goal for the various requirements that the city, the services that the city provides, and they're listed in the public documents about the population, about transportation, about public safety, about conservation and noise, and so forth. What I'm going to suggest is that we really add something to the charter that deals with the general plan. San Bernardino's general plan that we're working with now is from 2005. It's over 20 years old. In 2005, the focus of the general plan downtown was putting most of the downtown underwater, displacing about 3,500, mostly low income, elderly, minority population, not thinking about what the cost of adding more housing to house the people that were going to be displaced. But again, the kind of thought that there was no context to this. It kind of dropped out of the blue. The Water District had earmarks from, at that time, Jerry Lewis, and that was their side of it. And the mayor at that time spent 8 years of her mayoral time focused on this project, the Lakes and Streams project. And of course, when she left office, it was forgotten about. And there's been other examples as well. I think if at the corner of, there's a sign that spans 6th Street near G Street, welcoming the public. I don't know whether anybody notices that. It's a pretty substantial arch over the city. And why is that there? Well, the point is, initially, it didn't say, welcome to the city of San Bernardino. It said, welcome to the Arts and Entertainment District. It was a program that the mayor at the time, Evelyn Wilcox, and also her assistant, Ann, I can't think what Ann's last name was, but she had the Main Street project. Well, once Mayor Wilcox left office, that whole project, we still have kind of got the notions of an entertainment district, but the focus that it had there was going to be apartment houses for artists and so forth. They moved all the historic structures over to around where the central police station is. The central police station wasn't there, but all that property was assembled to shift the historic structures that were there over there to save them. So let me cut to the chase here, though. What I want to suggest to you is that San Bernardino needs some goals. The public needs to talk about it, and the other stakeholders as well. We started a general plan about 3 years ago, and somehow it just sort of drifted away for some reason. I'm going to suggest that there is a proper place that you could have a general plan requirement in the city charter. I have under section 401 powers and duties, and the powers and duties of the city manager under F it reads, prepare and submit an annual budget and a capital improvements program to the mayor and council, implement a final budget approved by the council to achieve the goals of the city. What are the goals of the city? We really haven't updated them since 2005, in which it talked about the downtown area being underwater. I suggest that you add there, and talk about it later on, a requirement that the city manager is required to, given some sort of a time frame, to examine the general plan every 15 years. A public examination in which you have the public involved with it and stakeholders and so forth, at least every 15 years. That would surely be what we've got now. We're 20, 21 years into a general plan that we've got, and it's very much out of date. And the point is that if you don't have goals, and if you can't agree upon goals, let me get my notes here, and I'm almost done. If leaders and stakeholders of an enterprise like a city can't commit to a common set of goals, shared values, clear identifying objectives, then decisions will be made addressing short-term rather than long-term issues. Short-term because there are no, again, one administration comes, here's the policies, here's the focus. Next administration, it's all different. Long-term goals in which everybody has had input, you've got experts advising, and I think that pretty much indicates what I'm thinking about.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mulvihill. Are there anybody else in the audience that would like to provide public comment before we move on? Don't all raise your hands at once. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on into the consent calendar. Consent calendar tonight consists of approval of the draft minutes from our March meeting. Are there any comments or questions on the consent calendar? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Moved by Johnson,
Second.
second by Albert. Okay, we have a third too. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, consent calendar passes. Okay, we will then move on to our discussion calendar. Item number 2 is the role, powers, and duties of the mayor. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I drafted this staff report in response to the staff report that I provided on March 25th, where I outlined the role of the mayor as outlined in the charter, and I tried to separate it from pre-2017, which we could refer to as the old charter, and then post-2017 after the most recent charter amendments. And I separated the sections in roles, powers, and duties. And the committee had a great discussion and brought up several different conceptual charter amendments. And so in this report, I tried to outline them to further aid your discussion and provide some generic staff analysis about how it would get done, where it might fit into the charter. And along with this, I wanted to mention that I spoke with the city attorney's office, and we were thinking about, as you guys go along with your discussions, timing. If you would like to see something appear on the next general election ballot or a future ballot, what kind of timing would you want to think about as you start to work through your issues and start to pin yourself down on certain amendments that you might want to collect and then discuss as a whole and provide into a report for the council's consideration. The last report that this committee did was in the end of 2022. So, you have information you want to add?
just want to add that in terms of the timeline, the calendar, I believe the cutoff time is going to be around late June for something that would go on the November ballot.
And so to close out this brief summary of my report, there were 3 conceptual charter amendments that you all discussed at the last meeting. The first one was a charter amendment that would provide the mayor sole discretion on nominations for the city manager for the mayor and city council to consider. The second was a charter amendment that provides the mayor a formal vote on all legislative matters, and I took that to mean in the same manner as a council member. And then the third one was a charter amendment that would provide additional details on the roles, powers, and duties of the mayor, as there was a discussion on the charter in its current form is a lot more condensed than the old charter. So that completes my report.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've got a couple of things here for consideration. We had 3 suggestions that came from our last meeting around providing the mayor with additional, authority to be the one responsible solely for nominating the city manager, which does kind of harken back to how it was prior to 2017. The mayor getting a vote, and then providing additional details on the role and responsibility of the mayor. And then kind of separate from that maybe is a bit more of a overarching conversation, is around timing for any of our proposed amendments, should we come up with any proposed amendments, and how that would relate to that presenting to the broader mayor and council for their consideration. Because anything that comes from us is going to still have to go to the mayor and council for them to ultimately say, yes, we want to place this on the ballot. Is that an accurate statement? Okay. So I have some thoughts, but I would prefer to open up for discussion if anybody on the committee, and perhaps what we can do is maybe address the 3 topics around the authority to solely nominate the city manager, the mayor getting a vote, and this additional details, which to me seems a bit nebulous, but maybe we can leave that for the last. So does anybody want to pontificate or provide comments or thoughts around either authorizing the mayor to be the one solely responsible for nominating the city manager, and or anybody would like to discuss authorizing the mayor to have a vote alongside the rest of the council?
Excuse me. I have a question. How is the current recruitment handled? Isn't it handled through an outside agency? And I can't remember. I believe they also use an outside recruiting agency for city managers and department heads, do they not?
Yes, it's slightly different for city managers and department heads. At the moment, if there is a vacancy, the council will meet in closed session. They'll discuss the direction they would like to go in the vacancy, whether they would like to appoint an acting or an interim. And then sometimes simultaneously, they'll also authorize staff, normally the Human Resources Department, or they'll designate the acting city manager to engage with a firm or recruiting firm. That city manager or HR may bring them back a collection of firms and entertain proposals. They'll select one of those firms, and then they will start working on a recruitment ad. They'll send that ad out, and they'll collect candidates, and most of the time those candidates are interviewed and vetted in closed session. And once the council has selected a candidate, they normally enter into negotiations with that candidate. And once they've come to a term where they feel like they can bring an agreement, they'll move that discussion and that topic into open session. And then the community will see an agreement for a city manager appear on a open session city council agenda. So that's normally how it happens for city managers. For department heads, it's usually run out of HR. We will open a formal recruitment through our HR website or a recruiting firm, and the process will be a lot more open and transparent for the public. So it's slightly different for both.
Okay, thank you.
And the current, just a question for me, the current charter, in the current charter, correct me if I'm wrong, but the mayor, this is one of the few areas where the mayor does have a equal vote along with the rest of the council. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So currently, our current situation is whenever a city manager, a potential city manager is being brought forward for consideration, that the mayor gets a vote just alongside his or her colleagues to make that decision.
Yes, and to clarify, it's section 303. It says that the mayor, section 303C, shall participate in the vote to appoint or remove the city manager, city attorney, or city clerk and fix their compensation, and to appoint members of the board's commission. But specifically, yes, those 3 appointed positions.
Great, thank you.
So
Okay.
as of right now, the mayor cannot nominate anyone, correct?
Correct. They do it as a collective body, going through that process that I just examined, that I just
And so I watched the last couple of charter meetings to try to prepare myself. And so my question is why, and I heard both arguments of the colleagues here. I just don't understand why we would just give the sole discretion to one person instead of having it across the board. I mean, I want to think that, multiple heads coming together come up with better nominations than just one person. That's just the way I view it. At this point, the way we have it right now, the mayor cannot nominate anyone. Is that correct?
Correct.
So only the city council can nominate.
I wouldn't say it's a nomination process. I would say it's more they come together and they will review a collection of candidates that meet qualifications that they may have proposed to the recruiting agency. Obviously, there's minimum qualifications, but they may say to the recruiting agency that they would like, an experienced city manager or something like that. But they will collect candidates, and as a group, they will vet them and determine which ones they want to interview and go along in that way.
But does the mayor is the mayor involved in those talks as
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
As a body.
So as Corey was kind of mentioning, the typical process is the city would hire a recruiting firm. They would go through, and then that firm is responsible for recruiting, collecting the application, resumes, cover letters, vetting that through the filter of, do they meet the minimum criteria? Is this kind of fit the match that the city is looking for? And then the recruiter will go forward and meet with the mayor and council behind closed doors in private and have a discussion on the 1, 2, 5, 10 candidates that have been brought forward, and then amongst themselves. So the mayor and the council, the entire body of 8, discusses who they want to interview, and then then they interview them together, and then it becomes a vote amongst all of them as to who to extend an offer to. Does that make sense?
So it's more like working like a team.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Corey, can you tell us how it was handled in the old charter?
Sure.
So we have something to compare.
Yeah, and you should have a tab in your binder for, I believe it's called Old Charter. And if you flip to section C16, which is Article 5, it states that the mayor shall appoint, subject to the confirmation by the Common Council, a city manager who shall be the chief administrative officer of the city. And I think "shall" is an important word there. Is it? C16, if you look at the bottom of your pages, in the Old Charter tab of your binder. And it's towards the bottom of the page, and it's under Article 5, labeled City Manager. In that first sentence, the mayor shall appoint, subject to the confirmation by the Common Council, a city manager who will be the chief administrative officer of the city. I haven't found that it goes into any greater detail about the administrative process, but it does say that it's the mayor who will appoint subject to the confirmation of the Common Council. And my understanding of that is a nomination for the council's consideration.
Yeah, that was how it was in, historically, back in the day, was the mayor would be, like we were just talking about, so the mayor would be the one working with the recruiting firm, and so the recruiter would then present those 1, 2, 5, or 10 just to the mayor, and then the mayor would be that first filter, potentially going through the interview process and all of that, and then it would be the mayor who then takes that candidate to the council as a body, and then makes a recommendation for the council to then appoint them. So it was, I would, to use Mr. Garcia's kind of term there, it's less of a team effort and more of a, okay, first step is got to make it through the mayor. If you make it through the mayor, then it ultimately goes to the council for their vote and consideration.
And at that point, is the mayor narrowing it down to one, or is she going in the old charter? Can you explain, did the mayor go to the council with more than one candidate to present?
I don't have any historical information on that. What I would say is that if the mayor did bring a appointment, it was most likely one person and that they wanted the council to consider. And if that person wasn't accepted by the mayor and city council, then it most likely would move to another potential appointment. But I don't know that for certain. Some of you may have some better historical information.
Ricky was there.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to provide some historical perspective on the city manager position as it exists in San Bernardino. When I first came on board as a council member, San Bernardino had a city administrator, Fred Wilson. And then subsequently, in time span, they changed his position from a city administrator to a city manager. And then Fred Wilson went to another location, and at that time, the mayor recruited a person that he saw at a convention, and this was the only time that a mayor brought forward somebody without using a headhunter firm. And other than that time, they utilized a headhunter firm, and they would bring 2 or 3 candidates to be interviewed by the council and say which one that you pick from the 2 or 3 that they interview. But out of that one time, that was the only time historically that they utilized where the mayor just went and found somebody and brought him forward to the city as a city manager. And the council approved him at that time.
Any other comments or questions about this particular portion? Okay. We'll go through the next one, and then we can kind of revisit both of these topics to see if we want to progress or advance them further along, or if we want to table them for another discussion, or just, I guess, for lack of a better term, let them die on the vine. So the next piece here is the mayor gets to vote. So does anybody have any comment or discussion about the concept of giving the mayor a full vote alongside the rest of the council?
Correct me if I'm wrong, sir, but doing that would have to be redistricting the city, correct?
To ensure what would be considered generally accepted best practices of not having an even number of voting members on a body, then one of two things would have to happen. We would either need to increase the number of wards from 7 to 8, or decrease the number of wards from 7 to 6 to allow for that odd number of votes. So you don't create a situation where you have a likelihood of a tie vote. So giving the mayor a vote, I think, is certainly something, and as somebody that was on the charter committee back in 14, 15, 16, this was a topic that was heavily discussed, both at the committee And when we were out with the committee consultant having public outreach meetings, because we had heard through surveys and feedback from the community that there was a strong interest in allowing the mayor to have a vote, because as we know, the mayor is the only position that is elected by all of San Bernardino and not just the individual wards. So there was a strong sentiment amongst the community to allow to give the mayor a full vote, which obviously has some strong benefits and pros. The challenge to that, of course, was you have 7 elected officials there, and which one of us goes, kind of thing. If so that's where I'll never forget the meeting, because we presented. The former chair was at the council meeting presenting this feedback, and the idea was brought up, and somebody on the council said, "Okay, so which one of us goes?" And at that point, it was kind of a dead issue. And so at that point, the charter committee no longer pursued any avenue to give the mayor a vote because of that necessary rearrangement of the number of wards. So that's a little bit of the background, or the history of the last maybe 10 years or so on discussions that had happened about giving the mayor a vote. I certainly have an opinion on it, but it's not something we can just say, yes, we'll do that, and then everything else falls into place. Like, there is a couple more pieces that would have to get worked out, whether that's increasing the number or decreasing the number, but something would have to change on that side too.
I have a question about that. With the growth of the city, is it time to possibly evaluate adding another ward?
I would say that's something for you all to opine on and talk with your appointing members, and something for the council to opine on. I believe we will be doing redistricting fairly soon. I think we did it in 2022, or 2021. Okay. So at the end of this decade, we'll be doing redistricting, and so that may be a good time, but it's something for you all to think about when it's time to do that. Yeah.
And I believe it was Mr. Daly who made the comment last meeting that there's not very many cities within our population that has 8 districts. And I sat there yesterday and I looked through all kinds of different websites, and I couldn't find any city that's equivalent to our population that has 8 districts.
Yeah, I have not found one in my research for the committee. I was also just talking with the city attorney's office, where I'm not completely sure that there's a requirement that there be an odd number of districts, but it would obviously be somewhat unorthodox in regards to voting. So,
Any other comments, thoughts, or feedback on that? Mr. Johnson?
Just like you mentioned, Riverside, they have 300,000 plus, and they only have 7 wards in their city. Fontana has 200,000 plus, and they only have 5 members city.
All in odd numbers.
Yes.
Well, I think at the very least, it's worth having a deeper study as to, like you said, the growth going into the city. Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? I think we also have to consider that the council also has voted to increase their pay. So with that increased pay, does that mean that they should have more of a full-time role and be able to serve a certain amount of constituents? So I would certainly be interested in having that kind of study and seeing what would be best. Because in a sense, I think that our job is to provide advice to the mayor and council, right? Not be advised by them. And so although I see that potentially reducing the amount of council seats is a political non-starter, I still think that as an advisory body, our job is to provide the best counsel and advice if that's in the best interest of the city, not necessarily anyone's personal political interests. If I may also add, too, that we should also say to the point that if we are going to give the mayor a vote, we also have to have the discussion of, we also would eliminate their power to veto as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. You know, in the spirit of this, right, fairness, the mayor in the current situation, given that the mayor's office or the mayor does not have a vote, it still retains the veto power, right? And so that veto power is the stick, if you will, for what the mayor has the ability to influence policy. I think my opinion would be that if the mayor were to be given a vote, then that veto would need to be taken away, because then it just creates an imbalance in the whole voting construct. That if I don't get my way, then I get to veto it. You know, it becomes a little bit weird.
And that would be our check and balance.
Correct.
So I understand. I would agree to that as well.
Okay. All right. So just to kind of maybe get some I don't know, decision here or you know, direction for staff on going forward. Well, first of all, do any other further discussion on whether or not the mayor should have a vote, what the ramifications are, before we kind of take a step back for a second? Okay, if there's none, then I guess what I'm maybe hoping we can do and get some direction for staff is on either of these two topics that we just discussed, whether giving the mayor the ability to solely nominate the city manager, or giving, or I should say, and/or giving the mayor a vote. Are either of those two things items that we want to carry forward for another conversation? Is there interest in this body to further discuss either or both of those with an eye towards any kind of recommendation to the mayor and council? Mr. Johnson.
On the first one that you mentioned, by giving the mayor that vote takes away from the team aspect, as Mr. Garcia mentioned. And if we're going to move forward as in unity, some kind of unification in the city, we have to learn to operate as a team. And so by doing something like that, that would be a divisive measure, in my opinion. Secondly, I don't think it would be palatable for the city to go away from the ward section and put a mayor in that seat as a ward. Nobody's going to give up their seat. That's just a reality in this city, in my opinion. And those are just my opinions.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on either of those two topics? And my only comment in response to Mr. Johnson's comment, I totally agree with the palatability of it. And I'm not necessarily in support of adding more wards. I think 7's a lot already, to be honest. And so the idea of adding an 8th ward, so now we would have 9 elected officials. They can barely get along with the 8 that we have up there. I conceptually like the idea of the mayor having a vote. I think, though, to get there, you have to go through some things that I don't think are realistic or viable. So those are just my 2 cents. Mr. Albert.
If I may, something that I just want to put out there in the ether is that, maybe it'd be worth, and again, I know that this is outside the box thinking, but maybe we can have a open-minded discussion about whether we need to, the pros and cons of single-seat winner-take-all districts or moving towards like multi-seat proportional representation types of electoral systems. Again, I know that would be brand new to Southern California, but it has been implemented even in places like California. I think it's worth having the discussion of just learning about these different alternative kinds of systems and what benefits we can take from them.
What was the term that you used?
So in terms of how we currently are structured, we're currently structured by 7 wards. Mm-hmm. And the winners it's a single seat winner take all, meaning each ward has a council member, and if they get 50% plus 1, they get to serve the entire ward. There's been implementation across the country and in other countries where they have a more of a multi-seat system where they have multiple council members that represent the parts of the district, and it's all based on the proportionality of the electorate's vote.
Okay.
So in a sense, just because you get 51% plus one, you don't just become the sole representative of that ward. You'll have a mixture based on what the electorate said, in a sense. So even minority groups will have representation in that, as a part of that outcome. And I know it's convoluted and it certainly seems complex right now, but it is a thing that can easily be broken down if we're open to thinking about it.
Okay. I would definitely need to understand that a lot more. I've got so many questions in my head right now about that. So that would certainly be I would probably want some feedback and help on that. I don't have necessary opposition to it, but I don't understand any of it either. So just in full transparency. But it's not ranked choice voting, right? This is separate and apart from ranked choice voting?
It's separate, but it goes together.
Okay. That's one concept I at least do understand.
It sounds kind of like a hybrid of open seating and districts.
Yeah, it depends on how you would want to do it, but essentially, again, it would be I think my goal here in speaking about this is just opening up our minds to learning about how the current system works, right? The single seat winner take all system versus how other jurisdictions have used this new model and what they're gaining from it. I think the benefits of it is more that there's potential for more consensus building and also making sure that everyone truly feels represented in the city. Because I think what electoral reform advocates say and they philosophize is they say that the right to govern is guaranteed to the majority, but the right of representation belongs to all of us. And so what we think is that the current single seat winner kind of takes that away from us. Just because you get 50% plus one of the vote, what happens to the 49% that feel left out? And so this proportional system, this multi-seat system, tries to kind of heal that divide in a sense.
Ricky, I'd like your thoughts on this. You've been involved
my,
for a long time.
No, I get that. But the person that's elected is supposed to support all the people that in there, the ones that voted for him, as well as the ones that didn't vote for him, if that's a righteous person. If it's not a righteous person, then you're going to get what you get. So it's up to you as a voter to make this election, making an informed decision. I don't know whether this is what you call a best practice. And so I always like to go with the best practice system. If it's best practice, then, hey, I like to look at it. Something new, I'm not in favor of everything something new in San Bernardino. We're in the old city. It's a challenge for people to swallow anything that is a newness in San Bernardino. I mean, that's just a reality. And we already fighting with, we came out of a hybrid system with the old charter. This new charter is melted down, but it's still a little bit hybrid things going on in here. And so I'm just in favor of looking at best practices, what's palatable for the community.
Okay. I think Letty was in front of you, and then Angela. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay. For me, I believe the best practice would be modify everything we have in front of us and create our own agenda, create what matters to us the most, not what Riverside did, not what Harupa Valley does, what works for us. Obviously, what we have in place has not really moved far. So we need to make the changes as time goes by. We need to make the modifications. We need to pull forward as a community and start plugging away to what really matters. And those are the essential tools that we are missing. I feel like we want But what really works is what we need, not what we want.
Okay. That sounds good to me. I think maybe for now, I'm not hearing a tremendous amount of interest in exploring these different models. I'm personally curious, but maybe this can be something that we consider for another meeting at a different time. And if anybody feels differently than I'm about to say, then please speak up. But it sounds like at this point, I don't hear any interest in pursuing further discussion on having the mayor be the one to solely nominate the city manager, nor am I hearing any strong support or interest in pursuing a potential charter amendment that would grant the mayor a right to vote alongside the council. Does anybody feel strongly opposed to what I just said?
I do.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, I just would like more information on how we could give the mayor some power to vote, some voting authority up on the council. And I understand it would be a give and take. Corey, is there anything that you could research for us for our next meeting that could show us examples? And I know, and I totally agree with Angela where she says that just because it's working somewhere else doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in San Bernardino. But can you provide us with any documentation on other agencies that do give the mayor a voting right? And what is not, like, again, back to the veto power, that would be removed if we had it here. You know, can give me some information on that? Give us some information?
Yeah, I'm happy to, if that's the will of the committee, if they'd like a little bit more information on that specific point, absolutely. Vice Chair, I'd love to, if we could get a consensus on that, then I'm happy to spend a ton of staff time on that. A couple things I'll mention in researching. For the most part, my understanding is that when mayors have the right to vote or have more administrative power, we move more towards a strong mayor form of government. And when they have less, we move towards a council manager form of government. So that's one thing to think about, where you all believe the charter should position the mayor in that spectrum. And then the second thing is that in looking at the two charters, there are some areas where the mayor has retained a vote. And so just so you have the clarity, one example is appointing and removing the city manager, city attorney, and city clerk. Those used to be elected positions. Now they're appointed positions, and the mayor has a role in appointing them, removing them, and fixing their compensation. So, for example, if we were to adjust the compensation of those appointed positions, the mayor would have a vote. As well as on, and this is Section 303, the mayor shall have a vote to appoint or remove members of boards, commissions, and committees. So that's another opportunity the mayor has retained a vote. And there's an exception if it's made wholly of less than a majority of the council members. So that's subcommittees. And then the mayor has the ability to appoint members of the council committees to a specific subcommittee. For example, we have a subcommittee on homelessness. The mayor gets to appoint all of the members at their own discretion. So the council doesn't weigh in on that subcommittee vote. It's not necessarily a voting power, but the mayor also is recognized in Section E as the head of the government for ceremonial purposes, chief spokesman, and what I think important to this specific point is representative of intergovernmental relations and establishes and maintains partnerships with regional roles. What that means is that the mayor sits on regional boards. So think about SBCTA, Omnitrans, and if they have a conflict or if they choose to, they can appoint another member of the council to serve in their place. So just wanted to highlight some of those voting or appointment powers that still remain in the charter, but I'm happy if the committee would like, I can look into what other communities or jurisdictions look like when the mayor has, and what I take you to say is a legislative vote outside of some of the things I mentioned.
So maybe, Mr. Albert.
And if, also for clarification, and I think for relevancy too, I think the mayor also has sole ability to appoint the water board members with, I think, also the consent of the council as well.
I'll have to double check really quick what the charter
And-
says about the water board.
And I do think that the mayor, okay, and I think that the mayor also has a vote on the budget as well, correct?
The mayor does not have a vote on the budget because that's a legislative item, I believe. Right, so the council has a vote on the budget. Specifically, I'm looking, just as you're speaking, at Section 603 of the current charter, Waste and Water Board. It says the water board of five commissioners shall be appointed by a vote of the mayor and the entire council. And then it refers back to Section 304, 304B. It has to be 5 affirmative votes of the mayor and members of the council. For the water board.
So the mayor actually gets a vote in that and needs 5 votes.
Yes. So the water board and all of the other boards, commissions, and committees that the council creates.
Yeah, so the mayor, the water board, 5 commissioners shall be appointed by a vote of the mayor and entire council. Commissioners shall serve terms of 6 years each. So maybe one thing, just kind of thinking in the spirit of moving this forward, in response to Ms. Briggs' comments, could we get, so maybe I'll just offer this as a suggestion, and if there's interest, we can see if there's consensus and we can give direction to staff. Maybe what we could do is for a future meeting to, if staff could come back with a presentation or at least a list of neighboring cities or cities within San Bernardino County or cities within the Inland Empire and or cities that have a charter, right? So we could, identify what the universe of cities we want to look at, but with a specific focus on how the mayor is elected and if the mayor has a vote. Does that would that address some of this and allow us to move that conversation forward?
Yeah, and I would like to see another one, the pros and cons.
Sure.
Yeah.
Pros and cons of
Her voting rights.
the mayor's voting rights?
Yes.
Pros and cons of whether or not to give the mayor a vote?
Right.
Okay.
Whether by giving her the right to vote, what would be taken away from her? What right, responsibility will be taken away opposed to what she currently has now?
Well, and some of that would be that would be for us to also determine. Staff can certainly provide the list, and this is how it is, but I'm not sure the staff would want to, and I don't want to speak for them, but would be in a spot to say these are the pros and these are the cons. That would really kind of be for us to decide if there are pros and cons. Because for some you might see a con as a pro, and I might see the other way around, and we don't want to put staff in the middle of that argument.
Right, but at least we can acknowledge the fact of what's going to work and what's not.
There's
gonna
trade-offs.
work. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I would second that and just recommend that if staff is going to prepare something like that, that they don't include pros and cons, but rather include what the effect would be if this happens versus if this didn't happen.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would limit my analysis to operationally, not necessarily how it would happen practically or what would the political impacts or anything, just operationally, how would we handle that as a staff? And normally it is we would develop new policies and procedures, and there may be something else in the charter that affects, and that similar line, so.
I think we keep skipping over the biggest issue here that we've already kind of came up that one of the things we'll have to do is either drop down to 5 districts or move up to, 8 districts. It sounds like the position of the mayor already has a lot of power and a lot of different votes. That what you just explained that. sir. My suggestion would be until the city's going to do another redistrict in 2031, you said? 2030?
Yes.
And at that time, we could possibly look into something like this. I'm not opposed to giving the position of the mayor additional voting powers, but right now, I don't think it makes sense because we're going to be almost forced to either increase or decrease the number of districts. So if we can't even decide on if we want to do that, which is going to be a challenge unless our city's population grows by 100,000 over the next 4 years, the chances of us going up to 8 districts, which again, we have not been able to find any other cities that have 8 districts. If that's the case, then I think it's just, we're not wasting time. I don't want to say wasting time because we're discussing and we're looking into it, but I don't think it makes a big difference.
Well, and not to jump away from this for a second, but it does kind of tie back into that broader conversation that was brought up at the beginning of the meeting around timing, and whether or not we want to submit any type of recommendation for charter amendment to the current mayor and council with an attempt or an eye towards the November election. And, you know, that is, I think that if there is a strong desire from this body to try to get something to the mayor and council to get on to the November election, then we would need to move with some quickness to go through this. However, if we want to be more deliberate and be more thoughtful, do some level of meaningful community engagement before any recommendation is given to the council, then I think we're answering the question like that by saying, we're going to do it on our time. And if it's, you know, we're in April, we're about to be in May, you know, if the deadline is in June to get something on a November ballot, and our next meeting is going to be May 27, you know, that leaves like 0 time for any meaningful community engagement. And so that I only bring it up because, you know, I'm sure, and I don't have any problem, and I'm certainly comfortable having more discussions about, you know, mayor votes, yes, no, what the impacts are, how other cities around us, how the mayor engages legislatively with other cities around us. We could spend a fair amount of time talking about that if we are all under kind of a common agreement that nothing is going to be presented to the council to try to get on the November election. And personally, my opinion on it is, if we're serious about making any changes to this charter, then there has to be some level of meaningful community engagement. And we cannot pretend that we can have meaningful community engagement in the span of like 3 weeks. And so if we agree as a body that we're not looking to try to get anything on the November 26th ballot, then we can kind of, you know, slow things down and have, allow for more debate and discussion on these particular items. What do you all think about that? And do we want to maybe just make a decision now if we want to try to, advance anything for the November 26th election or not? I guess I'll leave it at that.
I just want to say that I don't want to rush our process. I want us to be able to give clear and concise recommendations. I think we need a lot of public engagement before we move forward. We're discussing all kinds of things already, but we've not reached out to the public. What does the public want? Where do they stand on this? How much power do they want to give to the mayor, or are they good with the way things are? There's a lot of things that need to be discussed before we even make our recommendations. And I think the public engagement, Casey, I can't agree with you more. That's going to be very important, very pivotal to what we decide and discuss up here and what we take forward as our recommendations. And I'm really excited, I'm really looking forward to discussing the avenues that we're going to take for public engagement, because that's going to be a very important factor in what we're trying to accomplish up here.
Thank you.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a big, important decision that we could take and could benefit the city. So it's not something we should rush into.
Okay, great. Ms. Johnson?
You know, I think this, the mayor's discussion really boils down to the punishment that the council members laid on her about her staffing level, and by reducing it to one person. But it all goes back to working together as a team, giving the mayor the tools that they need so that she can succeed, so that San Bernardino can succeed. And if they're not working together, no matter what we put in this charter and changes, it's still it's those people sitting up there making those decisions. They're gonna find the loopholes to work it to their greater good instead of the city's greater good. But I think that's why we're talking about this. It's just because they decided to punish the mayor for staffing levels.
Yeah, I personally am in no rush to make any recommendations or get anything on the ballot for 2026. I'm certainly open to it for 2028, especially in November 2028, given that that's the highest voter turnout in a 4-year cycle. And I think that just based on the history of the modern history of this recent charter, I think engaging the community is really going to be the difference maker in whether the mayor and council are going to act on whatever recommendations we come up with. So meaningfully engaging the community on this should be really top of mind, for me at least right now, so that we're ready to go for that higher voter turnout year of 2028. And we've collected that engagement from the community, and we're better informed as to how to move forward. But I do want to reiterate that I think it's important when we're thinking about these recommendations, not to necessarily think about the personalities that currently exist on the current council and dais, but think about these positions in the general overview, because the charter is going to outlive us all, hopefully. And so we should be thinking about not necessarily the current personalities, but what is the best practices, what is to accomplish the greater good for our city.
All right, so I think we have consensus, Madam City Attorney and staff, that there is zero interest in trying to advance anything for the November 26th election. I think we've got consensus there, so yay for us. All right. Now that kind of opens up everything else a little bit for us, right? So now we don't have to feel like we're rushing to get to anything, and frankly,
Right.
Personally, I agree with Mr. Albert's comment that, what we're doing, we would do ourselves a disservice if we identify these positions with individuals, because I've seen all of the seats shift. I've seen all of the people in the current council evolve and rotate out, and having the consistency within the charter, the charter outlasts everything. And so it's really good for us to kind of not feel like we are beholden or rushed to try to meet any kind of timeline. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add on to something for the committee members to consider, given that you don't want to move forward with something for the 2026 ballot, is that the timing of the meetings. I enjoy coming in our public policy discussions, but previous committees have somewhat gotten a little bit exhausted with the number of meetings. And so if you're looking out to 2028, it may be something for you to consider down the road if monthly meetings are the best course, the best strategy to march towards a deadline, or if it's even more frequent, or if you want to be more targeted. Obviously, you all have the ability to call special meetings. And so just thinking about your meeting calendar as you strategize the committee work leading up to proposing something for a ballot, so you don't feel like you're meeting every month for the next, year and a half, 2 years.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think my opinion, at least initially, is let's keep our monthly cadence, because we do have some things I think everybody's itching to talk about. and ultimately, again, right, we can come up with, you know, the best laid plans, but if it falls flat with the mayor and council, then, you know, we're not good, you know, nothing is going to happen. So I think that's a very important consideration. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Daly, I wouldn't say nothing is going to happen, because we also have to think bigger, right? That it's not just the mayor and council that have the power to put something on the ballot. The community can also put something on the ballot. So again, it's just thinking about all of our options here, you know, going forward.
And I think the sooner the better we start with this outreach to communicate with the constituents out there and get the community involved as soon as possible. There's tons of people out there that don't even know what the charter is, and that's the normal right now, but we need to change that.
Okay, that is a great way for us to move forward. Thank you for that, Ms. Torres.
If I may also add, Mr. Daly, too, just really quick on that topic, I am certainly open to like potentially having like the holiday times, you know, observing the holiday times for meetings off or adjusting our schedule accordingly. But I agree that there's certainly a lot to get into and dive into, especially hopefully on the next topic about improving the council manager system.
Sure, absolutely. So before we leave the mayor's item here, sounds like we have consensus to table or scrap the idea of the mayor solely nominating the city manager. Do we have consensus to ask staff to come back with some analysis of other cities, like-sized cities, other like-sized charter cities, other cities within the Inland Empire, on how the mayor functions? The functionality of the mayor and the role of the mayor as a legislative body. Do we have consensus for that to give staff direction to bring some more information to us back at our next meeting? Yeah?
What I had written down, and a little bit more specificity is always helpful for us, was how the mayor is elected and the voting mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think those two things, right? Like how the mayor is elected and whether or not the mayor has a vote and any other additional powers or responsibilities that the mayor has.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. Everybody good? Yes. All right. Okay, congratulations. We got through this item. All right, moving on. We will be soon to the public engagement. First of all, we're going to move to the second item on our agenda here, which is the discussion around improving the council manager form of government. Do we have any presentation from staff?
Yes. Similar to the first item, this is a follow-on updated report based on the March 25th report, where the committee discussed a variety of topics pertaining to charter amendments that could specifically improve the council manager form of government. I went through each of them. The first one was ranked choice voting. It was a potential charter amendment that would implement ranked choice voting for replacement candidates after a recall election instead of a plurality. And then I provided some analysis on the section of the charter that it may be most appropriate to amend and how we would facilitate that. I also mentioned in my report that the charter cities of San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, San Leandro, and Redondo Beach, there may be a few others, I found that they used ranked choice voting for their municipal elections, including when filling the office after a vacancy. The second one was a discussion about a charter amendment reinstituting an elected city clerk. And I noted that when Measure L passed, which was the charter amendment in 2016, it transitioned the city attorney and city clerk from elected positions to appointed positions, and outlined the competing sections of the old charter and the new charter, and then mentioned that we would need to ratify Section 505 of the existing charter to make that charter change operational. The committee also asked specifically the cost of a charter amendment, and I took that to mean placing a ballot measure on an election. And I spoke with the city clerk, and she gave me some information that those costs can vary depending on the timing. Off-year elections, she says, tend to be a little bit higher, and that our most recently available data was the 2020 election where the city placed Measure S on the ballot, which was the 1% local sales tax, transaction and use tax, and that replaced Measure Z, and the cost that we incurred from the registrar of voters for that was $54,000 to place that specific measure on the ballot. That doesn't include all of the other costs that we have to pay to place our election on the ballot. And then finally, the committee asked me to identify some charter provisions that could improve the council manager form of government, and I interpreted that as provisions, specifically recent amendments that I could find in other charter cities that specifically speak to improving the council manager form of government. And so I found a few. The first was City of Riverside, Measure L. It was an Office of the Inspector General Charter Amendment, and that passed in 2024. City of Los Angeles, Proposition H, which is a city ethics commission that passed in 1990. So again, I'm looking at only charter cities. City of Long Beach, Measure AAA, it was an independent auditor in 2018, that passed. And the City of San Diego, Proposition C, an independent city auditor. I'm sorry, there was a typo here. This one was an independent budget analyst, and that was in 2004, and that passed. So hopefully that's helpful for your discussion. These are all specifically charter cities that passed recent charter amendments, specifically to improve the council manager form of government.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, are there any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback from members of the committee on ways to improve the council manager form of government? Mr. Johnson.
I have a question on the cost. Is that for each ballot measure that you decide to put on there? Or?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Does anybody have any other comments or feedback?
I personally love what Riverside did with their inspector general position. I'd just be kind of curious about, again, relating it back to our city. My questions would be, and hopefully maybe we can come back with some more information on this, but how does the inspector general maintain their independence from the mayor and council by being appointed from them? And also, again, having that essential just cause protection in place to where they can do their investigations in an independent manner without being worried about potential repercussions from the mayor and council if their investigations turn out putting essentially the mayor and council in a bad light. So I'm certainly really interested in hearing or learning more about how they maintain their independence, but also their protections in place from political influence. Again, personally, I'd love to hear more about that because I think it's certainly relevant to improving our council manager form of government, understanding more about the morale within our city staff right now and how it relates to our ongoing turnover at the city manager's office and how that impacts things like the general plan that's been raised. Because I definitely want to learn more about that and hope we can do a deeper dive on that.
A few comments on that. This was a 2024 charter amendment. My understanding is that the city of Riverside hasn't stood up the office as yet. I believe they are recruiting for the position, so it's still in its infancy. And the second thing that I'll mention is that the way that the language is written, although they are appointed by the mayor and city council, the charter also requires that they are provided sufficient funding through the annual budget process. So that gives some protection to them. And then finally, I thought to mention that when I thought about these specifically, the charter amendment to improve the council manager form of government, It would seek to fortify the professional management structure by clarifying the boundaries between political leadership and daily operations. So that's the context of these.
Okay. Well, any other comments, thoughts, or feedback? I've got one thought. So one of the comments that I made at our last meeting was in reference to a strategic plan. A general plan obviously is hugely important from a land use standpoint, but the strategic plan, a proper strategic plan, not a one-pager that says, goals, but a proper strategic plan, is, to me, an element that is sorely missing from the city of San Bernardino. The strategic plan, if prepared, adopted, and implemented, creates the framework for which decisions and budget allocations are made, and it provides the metrics of progress and measurement. An easy example is, if we say parks and open space is a priority for the city, then there would be some metric that says for every 10,000 people, there would be this number of parks, right? So you have something that you can measure and look at. And so we say, all right, in 2025-26, we had 15 parks and we had 200,000 people, and that's the ratio of this. And the best practice, according to park professionals for cities, is this percentage. So then we can say, okay, well, we weren't there for this year. We didn't meet it, but next year, if it's a priority, then we will try to make it. Or, you can run down the list, right? The number of streets that have been repaved every year, the number of law enforcement officers per capita, new business permits that are issued. I mean, there's all sorts of metrics around how we can measure the improvement of the city of San Bernardino that provides us, it creates a framework for which the council can actually work together, because to adopt a strategic plan, they would be the ones to adopt a strategic plan. And then every decision that is brought forward on a council item ties back to one aspect of that strategic plan. So council member are like, why are we doing this? I don't understand what this is for. But if it's clearly stated, well, this relates to strategic plan goal number 3.2, ABC XYZ, then even if they don't necessarily agree with the item or are confused about it, they know that they've bought in and adopted the strategic plan. So all that is to say, I feel very passionately and strongly about the need for San Bernardino to have a strategic plan. Now, I'm looking at section 401 of the charter, and specifically section 401 K, subsection K, assist the mayor and council in developing long-term goals for the cities and strategies to implement these goals. I think that's good. Part of me thinks that if it was a requirement that the city, the charter required the city to adopt a strategic plan every 5 years and provide an annual review of the progress towards implementing that strategic plan, excuse me, that could be a way for us to put some accountability, but also some parameters towards how we get to success, and have that, that could be something, in my opinion, that could actually improve the council manager form of government and the overall operations of the city by having a requirement in the charter that says we have to have a strategic plan, as opposed to the city manager will assist in the development of long-term plans and goals. That's just my, soapbox, if you will. I'll stop talking now.
I agree with Casey on that one, but I also see that in order for us to improve the council manager forum, we need to do some vital changes, like prioritize some of the stuff that's in the ballot, or some of the stuff that's in project, for the city, is being executed when there's a dire need, in another area. And so I feel like what we need to do is prioritize what's urgent, what's necessary. And in order for us to gain that would be, once again, for me, the community involvement, to find out the desire, the need that the city really needs from the people, because they're the ones that are living it, sweating it. And so we need to get that information from them. Regardless of what we want, it has to be according to what is needed.
Would the strategic plan be a living, breathing document that can be modified as we go along, as necessary, as different needs and concerns rise to the top?
Absolutely. So typically, and there are dozens of strategic plans that we could look at if we wanted to look at other cities. I guarantee that. Typically, they're a 5-year strategic plan, and you go through a process of developing the strategic plan. In the first year, you adopt it. Here's our goals and priorities for the next 5 years. Here are the things that we're going to focus on. Here's where we're starting. And here's where we want to get to. And we don't just say, we don't know what that looks like. It's, okay, if we've got, again, using the park analogy, right? We want to increase the number of parks per capita from year 1 to year 5. And then we track that over each year to make sure that moving in that direction. And then typically what would happen is every year, the council would come together, they revisit it. How are we looking? Things still looking good? How's our progress? Are we still making progress? Have priorities changed? Because every 2 years you might have the potential of having new elected officials on board. And so there is that opportunity, and I would say requirement, to revisit it every year, and then every 5 years to adopt either a continuation of the existing strategic plan or create new goals and priorities based on the current leadership at the time. So yes, the short answer, long answer to the question is that yes, it is and would be a living document.
And that, I guess, it leads to my concern. I mean, I think it's important that we have this and that we have goals for the city and that we all work together towards this. However, I do see that shifting every election year, in some shape or form. I do see those goals and priorities changing.
Well, and that's where the mayor and council, to Mr. Johnson's point, right? That's where you actually have to work together, and having the plan, at least there is some foundation of agreement amongst the elected officials that says, and there's community involvement, right? It's not like the 7 of them would, or 8 of them would come up and say, all right, this is what we think. It would actually be a process where you get community engagement. The community provides an opportunity to weigh in on the strategic plan so that when it does go to the council and they do adopt it, there's an accountability component too of saying, hey, you voted for this. We told you we wanted more parks. We told you we wanted more law enforcement. We told you we're tired of potholes. You adopted this. If you're not getting it done, well then, and since it's a 5-year plan, that means it'll outlast any one individual, right? It's 5 years, so it's not like it's a 2-year plan, it's a 5-year plan. So your point is very well taken, but by having it be such a long duration, it gives that ability for there to be some stability, because ultimately, the city council and the mayor are the ones that are making the policy decisions and the budget decisions. They then give direction to the city manager to go do it. And so the manager needs to have that consistent direction, because you don't just add new parks overnight. It takes time. You don't just add new law enforcement over time instantly. It does take time. And so having a plan gives that ability for the city manager to do his or her job better by knowing what that direction is, even if we do get a new council member, right? Has the strategic plan changed? No. Okay, that's still what my guiding document is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. I mean, parks are important. So anyway, so that's I'll get off my soapbox on the strategic plan. But to me, that's an important thing, and it's something, at least in my mind, that could actually, if we wanted to, you could make some changes to the language in this section to require a strategic plan be adopted, require the city manager and the council to work towards an adoption of that, and have it be updated every year, or revisited every year, and a requirement that every 5 years it get readopted.
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Casey, if I may, I mean, given that the fiscal year is going to be starting up again in July of this month, and the city's doing some kind of outreach on getting community input, maybe see if we can bring up at the next meeting about like what's the update on the general plan, since we haven't heard anything really in the last couple of years on movement from that. How does the budget connect with the charter? What are some things that we can think about in terms of improving the council manager as it relates to the budget? Is our budget sufficiently supporting our staff and carrying these things out on a regular basis? Again, going back to the turnover of our manager, how does that impact that strategic plan and whether it has to stop, start? I certainly think that's certainly of interest to me in bringing that back sooner, given that the fiscal year is starting and it's relevant to that discussion. And more we can talk about the budget between now and July, the better.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, thoughts, questions, concerns, ideas?
Just a thought too regarding the budget. I would certainly be interested in. I know some cities have implemented a 2-year budget cycle. Just kind of interested in hearing what were the thoughts that went into that. What are the benefits to that? I think as our city, we do it from year to year, but I'm wondering if that extra year gives us more of a long-term plan to carry out the goals and objectives of what we adopt in our budget instead of a more short-term perspective.
So maybe what we could do, just to looking at the clock here, I thought we had the charter public outreach after this item, but do we not have a staff report for that? Just saying. So there is no staff report. Okay, got it. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Corey. Corey, does the charter have a budget on its own, a separate budget?
The charter committee,
Yes.
it does not have a separate budget. All of the mayor and city council board commissions and committees where citizens sit on them, there aren't any specific budgets for them. But there are staff members assigned as liaisons, and those members' salary and benefits are budgeted in the budget, so
Okay.
indirectly, yes. But I will note that the charter committee in the past, and the members can confirm this for me, the council specifically created this committee because it was a charter requirement to cyclically review the charter and provide recommendations to the council and the committee. And so to do that, they created this charter committee. And prior to the last charter amendment, they asked the committee specifically to go off, review the charter, provide us recommendations, and they provided resources at that specific time. I believe they provided a consultant, which was, I guess, allocated specifically to help the committee review the charter and provide recommendations. So at that time, there was a budget given to the charter committee specifically for a consultant, but generally, there are no budgets attached to committees and commissions and boards.
Yes, go ahead.
I would like more information in what James suggested about a 2-year budget cycle. But are we doing it annually because that's how it's been done historically? Or is it because we're still under some kind of bankruptcy guidelines that we have to follow?
I don't believe there are any guidelines in the bankruptcy settlement that specifically states that the city has to have either an annual or a biennial budget, but I can check on that. There's section 700 of the charter says the fiscal year of the city shall begin on the first day and end on the last day. And 60 days prior to the beginning of the fiscal year, the city manager shall prepare and submit a budget for the council. I don't know that that locks us into a certain type of budget. You could obviously present that budget each fiscal year, but plan for 2 years. I know since I've been here, we did have a city manager that moved to a biennial budget process. I believe that was in 2024. But subsequent city managers went back to an annual budget process. So it is subject to the city manager. The charter does speak to it a little bit.
James, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I would just be wondering if, has our current city manager weighed in on biannual versus annual?
I don't know that he's weighed in to the council, but he is required to bring forward a budget by the beginning of the fiscal year this year. I believe that there is a budget workshop scheduled on the city council, so we may get some more clarity there as to if he prefers a annual or biennial budget.
Is it possible that we can maybe get like an analysis of biannual versus annual? And like we just mentioned, it's been in flux in our past. I'd certainly be interested in kind of hearing more about that and how it affects our charter.
Maybe what I was going to recommend or suggest here, so we can get some consensus and direction to staff, is similarly to what we talked about previously, which is to request that staff do some research, do some surveying of other local / like size / charter, whatever, again, filter we want to look at, but to maybe come back to us with some additional information on local governments that utilize a 2-year budget, so that we can have an understanding of what that looks like and what cities are doing that. And then I'd also like to see a similar level of review on other cities' strategic plans. And if this board and this committee is open to it, maybe we can get consensus to ask staff to review both of those items and come back to us either at our next meeting or a following meeting with a presentation on those 2 items as it relates to the improvement of the council manager form of government. Is that something that we got some consensus on? Is that okay? Any issues?
Absolutely agree, but I agree with some of what the other committee members have said, that I agree with looking at it, analyzing what other cities have done. But given what Corey just mentioned, that there's been fluctuating aspects of this policy regarding the budget, I would like an internal review as to how that's impacted our city and as it relates to the charter. And because I think you've mentioned too in the past that you want to dive into what's going on in our city to learn from what's going right, what's not going right. And I think this is one of those areas that I'm certainly interested in going with what your sentiments are about how is this internally impacting us on the city level.
As for me, we need energy. Energy costs us money. So we need to know what we have right in front of us as far as how much can we do and cannot do. What's within our scope. Outreaching may take a budget on its own for that same reason. Outsourcing is not cheap. It is pretty expensive. I understand we need to get the community involvement, and that can take a big buck. So we need to know where we can, look forward to as far as the budget is for us, what we can and cannot do to create the energy that we need to have the people vote.
So I think that makes sense. Maybe what we could do is this, because I think you're talking about more on the public outreach side.
Yes.
And that is what's going to be next on our topic of
Yes.
discussion here. So if there is consensus to have the 2 items, the 2-year budget and the strategic plan reviewed, analyzed, brought back to us
Yes.
as we talk about that specific item, the improvements of council manager form of government. If we can get some consensus here, we can give direction to staff that those 2 things are of interest as it relates to the council manager form of government improvements there.
Great.
Then we can move into the discussion about the public outreach.
That sounds perfect.
Does that seem reasonable? Mr. Johnson?
Just going back a little further, mentioned the Inspector General position out in Riverside, and it's, looked like it's pretty similar to the auditor in Long Beach type of position. I would like to know, since Long Beach has been in position a little bit longer, 18, how much is that added to their budget for that position? Staffing levels, I know the city is $450,000, but I still would like to know how much that is, especially since Riverside has not done anything in that as well. And just as a point of clarification on another item, when we talked about the city manager position in Headhunter, I was just reading back on some literature and come to find out that Charles McNeely, he was also hired by an executive recruiting firm. And so just to clarify that, all of the city managers that we've gotten,
We've always gone out.
we've always gone out to a firm.
We've always gone out to an independent agency
Yeah,
to get us our city managers and I believe our department heads as well.
yeah.
And then it's got broken down, as you explained, to the top 5, top 3, and then they're evaluated collectively.
And just also mentioning that when McNeely came back on the second time around, he put together a plan for the city on his way out, worked on it real well, knowing he was leaving. But as soon as he left, they just, disregarded it. So it would be nice if we put some teeth in here, if they put down, if we're working on a strategic plan, that no matter what changes, they got to work on the strategic plan.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. I appreciate you saying that, sir, because that's kind of my thinking as well, is that if it's a shall, then it's going to happen type of deal. Okay, so again, just being mindful of our time here. So,
Casey, if I
Yes, sir.
can, just real quick, I do want to thank staff for including the City Ethics Commission in this outline of our agenda. And I do think that it's certainly not urgent, but I think that it would be interesting to kind of dive into whether an ethics commission would be a good thing for our city, and maybe even something that could be added to the purview of our charter review committee, given all the changes that seem to be coming through regarding campaign financing, conflicts of interest. Having that ethics component along with our charter review committee, I think, can give us more relevancy on a more regular basis, as opposed to being activated, when the mayor and council feel like it. I think ethics are an ongoing problem in our city, and I think it's something that potentially could be useful for our charter committee to expand our purview into.
okay, so then maybe what we can do is maybe we can add in addition to. So this is going to not all happen at once, right? Because we've got amazing staff, but we've got one amazing staff. And believe it or not, he's got an actual job of other things that he's responsible for in the city manager's office beyond this. But that being said, and in consideration of the discussion here, so I heard interest in Inspector General, and I heard interest in Ethics Commission. So maybe not for May, but maybe down the road, we can have a discussion about those two different, the Ethics Commission as well as the Inspector General. Generally good, folks, team? All right. So sounds like we have consensus, Mr. Hodges, around a biannual budget, strategic plan, Ethics Commission, Inspector General. Very good. All right, congratulations, everybody. We got through that item. Now, so now we find ourselves in a situation where we have committed that we would be done by 8 o'clock. We have one item left to discuss around public engagement, and so I will leave it to you all as to whether or not you want to dive into this now, spend the next 22 minutes doing that, or if we have public engagement be an item that we start the next meeting with. I'm fine either way, but just mindful and respectful of time at this point, and the interest in the topic of public engagement.
Big topic.
I think the sooner we get started with public engagement, the better. Going out there into the community, getting information out there so people are informed and can make good decisions and come to us with what they see is important to them. I believe at one of our prior meetings, there was a discussion as to who would be doing the presenting at these outreach sessions. Corey, can you give some clarity on that? I'm sorry, I don't remember. But I know it was a bit back and forth as to if we would be out there giving information, because we'd have to be objective, or if somebody from the city would actually spearhead all of this.
So we had discussed a few different things on that topic. One thing I'd like to note is that if you flip to our tab for bylaws in your packet, in Article 3, Section 1, it states that, and this is the bylaws tab, the chair or president shall preside over all meetings of the commission. The chair or president shall represent the commission in meetings with city officials and members of the public, and shall report to the commission information pertinent about those meetings or any other business. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that the bylaws do allow the chair to represent the commission in meetings with city officials and members of the public. In addition to that, as a staff liaison, my job is to facilitate the things that you all are doing, and so I would also participate. In addition to that, at our March meeting, I did have a staff report on this specific topic, where I mentioned that in the development of the 2016 final report, the committee, the Charter Review Committee, utilized several education and outreach options that could be replicated. I kind of walked you through those. I spoke with the city manager prior to that meeting and reported back that the two areas that he thinks that he would support his staff in helping you guys to facilitate would be developing a public survey, which was done in July and September of 2015. At the time, we did have the assistance of a professional consultant, but the committee released a public survey and obtained 440 survey responses. And then secondly, hosting a public forum. In 2015, the committee held 3 public forums in 3 wards and 4 additional forums that were held in 4 other wards in 2016. And I mentioned that the city manager was also supportive of something like that. So to answer your question as far as who would be involved, I think that the bylaws already authorized the chair to be involved as far as being the specifically representing the commission in meetings with the public, but that doesn't mean that the committee members can't be involved somewhat in disseminating that information, depending on how we structure it. And then secondly, the staff liaison can be involved. I'm an extension of the city manager. He's provided me as a resource, and he's also indicated that he will assist where appropriate in providing the committee resources to accomplish a public survey and a public forum. So hopefully that's helpful.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. So those public forums were the ones that I was referring to, that we did where we went out into the community. The consultant that was hired was who presented the information about, at the time, what the potential new charter was going to be and what the changes were. And those outstanding questions that I mentioned earlier in our meeting about whether the mayor should have a vote or not. The survey is how we identified that there was strong support from the community for the mayor to have a vote. Those public forums and community meetings were also where we heard from the public and the community about what their interests and priorities were. And so, to me, I'm fully supportive, and I'm really happy to hear that the city manager is willing to put some resources to do this, to conduct a public survey, right? We're 10 years later, we've got more technology, we've got more ways to engage with the community, whether that's on digital, socials, good old-fashioned paper, all of the different ways, texting, all the different ways that we can, solicit public input about the charter, right? Because I think you mentioned that most people don't even know what the charter is, and I think that personally, my feeling is that people assign lack of progress to the city to the charter where it really doesn't belong. That's not these are not the droids you're looking for, right? Like they know the charter, they're angry with the lack of progress in the city, and so it's the charter's fault. And I have strong feelings in the opposite, that that is not the case at all. But I also think that most of the city, and I say this in the definition of the word, are really ignorant about what the charter is and what it is and what it is not and what its role and function and purpose is. And so I'm a huge fan of having a public survey done. I think that'd be a great thing to do. I think it would be great to then, I mean, my opinion is have the survey done first, get as much as we can from that, and then from there we have information that then can be used to schedule public forums to talk about what we heard and the feedback from our survey. And I personally would prefer if none of us were the ones presenting what the charter is. I would feel more comfortable if it was a professional, a third-party professional, whether that is staff or a consultant. Because the city hired a consultant to help us with the development of the new charter, to do the public forums, to do the survey. I thought that worked well because city staff is in an awkward position potentially to talk about things that could change how the charter and how the city functions and operates. And we have conscious and unconscious bias that is going to come out no matter what, right? In one way, shape, or form. So I would feel more comfortable if we were to have a third party kind of be the facilitator of those public workshops and forums. But I think that's, to me at least, that's the second step. The first step, in my opinion, ought to be like the survey, right? You know, putting some time and energy into developing a survey and getting it out there and letting it be out there for a couple of months so that the community has a chance to really dig into it, allow for the mayor and council to talk about it, to go out into their neighborhood associations, to really drive participation in the survey. And then once we have the information from the survey, then that gives us something to go talk to the community about. I'll stop talking, but that's my 2 cents.
I would like to see it in multiple languages, possible, because we do have a high ratio of a diverse, culture here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is this something that we could coordinate with the water department to put a flyer or something in the water bills when they go out? And we could, that would hit every home in the city.
That's something I can definitely ask staff operationally how we would handle that and what the cost would be, and I can get back to you.
Okay, I'd like some more information on that.
You're wondering what would the cost be and the feasibility of adding a bill insert for the
Correct.
water bill? Okay.
Any other
Oh,
comment?
we got the orange show.
Comments, thoughts, or feedback?
We could do a Coachella.
A charter cella? A charter cella? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just want to share my perspective at least. First, I'm a little bit leery about recommending a third-party aspect of it. I've been to enough city meetings in our area where we've hired a out-of-the-area consultant that does a flashy job, and there's really no connection to our community, and there's no trust. I would like to see our committee members at the forefront of the community engagement plan to help mitigate, build that trust back with our city. And I think that in terms of the timeline, especially with the nuanced topic of the charter, I first of all would be open to the city putting out information about how the public can on an ongoing basis communicate their thoughts directly to the charter committee, not just 4 or 5 days before our charter committee meetings, but on a regular basis. What do you think? 365 days of the year. So I think there's that to be said. But I think that the public forums leading the way can help bridge that nuanced aspect of the charter and have these deeper discussions to essentially shield us against potentially like inflammatory thoughts that don't really pertain to the charter in a sense. And then I think based on the public forums, if the public forums lead the way, then we can get more informed feedback through the survey, as opposed to potentially putting out a survey and people not necessarily, again, knowing how the charter works and operates and getting information that may be popular, but not necessarily maybe goes against best practices. And then all of a sudden we're having that lead the discussion in terms of our thoughts.
Well, maybe I can just respond to that. I think the survey is a way, a low barrier of entry. I know that there's a survey from 2015-16 somewhere, right? So we already have a survey that was done, several years ago. I don't see, excuse me, I don't see any reason why we couldn't take a look at that, update it per the, discretion of us as a committee to identify what questions we want to ask. And question one is, do you know that the city of San Bernardino has a charter? If yes, what do you know about the charter, right? Getting some basic information, because and the reason I say that is I think that if you go straight to public forums, and it's I think you're going to have a bit of a free for all, and that kind of concerns me. I've seen public forums in San Bernardino. I've seen city council meetings in San Bernardino. I've seen meetings go off the rails and last for 8 hours. And so I'm somewhat reluctant to just jump into doing public forums. Plus, it's a heavier lift from the organization and staffing component to it. And notwithstanding concerns of an out-of-town consultant, I think my interest in having a third party be the one to be the voice is more around objectivity and an unbiased recitation and presentation of facts and how things are. I think that if any one of us and not especially, but any one of us and all of the members of the committee, including the ones that aren't here, if any one of us were to be the face and the voice of it, then our individual biases are going to come out. And that is going to create a challenge that is unnecessary, in my opinion. And so, but that's going to take a little bit of time. If the city manager is willing to, give us some budget to hire a third party, and it could be somebody that we agree on. I'm not trying to dictate or, make any of those kind of, full-on discussions or thoughts right now. But I think maybe what we could do for our next meeting is that take these two pieces of it, right? A forum and a survey, and ask staff to come back to us with some more information. Maybe we can identify what was in the last survey. Maybe we can identify the information that was presented at the forums. And maybe we can identify the budget that the charter committee had at that the city allocated to the charter committee, 10 years ago, to help facilitate all these things. That could give us at least some information that we can work on to work towards making some kind of decision.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. A couple thoughts. As far as one idea is the committee could be part of vetting the presentation for the chair to present. If they so choose, it's outlined. So that's an option. The survey could also poll the community for forum dates as part of it. Are you available on this day for a public forum? That's something. I've done a previous survey for one of the projects here, and we kind of use that to gauge how many people would show up at a future date. It could also, the questions could be structured in a way that educates based on the actual charter. So the charter section says this and question. And it's something that you guys could agree on specifically what sections you want to ask, and it would be pretty straightforward. And then the survey questions could then be the structure of the forum. We just literally go over the questions again and open it up in a public forum. And then one idea that I had, and I don't know if it's possible, but the city does employ a hearing officer. That person's job is to hear administrative citation penalties that are issued to the public. They are to be objective. They're not a representative of the city. They're to interpret our municipal code and objectively and make rulings. And so potentially that could be some person or that type of person. If the committee were able to have the resources, it's just an idea that could be an independent arbiter. But so those are some of the thoughts.
I personally think we should do both, a survey and a consultant, honestly. Liability purposes, we do need to have the professionals take care of and start the initiate, you might want to say, and then have them get to know us on a personal level that, you know, we are the commissioners and, you know, this is what we're coming across with. So I agree with both. Both ways are great.
Okay.
Corey, I had a question regarding the hearing officer. Isn't that hearing officer primarily to hear parking citation issues?
Yes, that we currently employ a hearing officer to hear a variety of essentially appeals or administrative civil penalty hearings. And it could be issued from either code enforcement, it could be issued from animal control. Their job is to hear those. My suggestion is that specific profession, the hearing officer, you know, is potentially someone that we could use to be that independent arbitrator, specifically for like a public hearing process. It was just an idea. I don't know operationally if it's possible, if the cost would exceed something that could even be considered, but for us to find somebody that was completely independent, that would be the type of person we were looking for.
And in this discussion, I agree with both James and Casey. We want to be independent, but we want to be engaged. And I think as a committee, we need to be approachable. They need to know who we are. The community needs to be able to see us at Stater Brothers and, you know, hey, you're on the charter committee. I have a question. Yeah, I'm going to be biased because I'm going to want them to go my way. But, you know, ultimately, it's their decision. And if we have these public forums and we have community engagement, they're going to hear both sides. They're going to hear the current charter, they're going to hear the old charter, and they're going to hear our recommendations. So I think we need to be approachable. They need to know who we are. And I agree that bringing a third party in, it's not going to give them that comfort that we need to be an approachable committee. I guess is what I'm trying to say. We don't want to be an untouchable committee where they're not comfortable coming to us. They're not. We had 4 people here this evening. Our first meeting, it was jam-packed. So I think we're losing a little bit of our connection already to the community. And we need to do everything we can to keep them engaged, keep them involved. I thank you two for staying here all night. And we appreciate you being here. And I think we need to continue that. We need to continue that, reaching into the community, letting them know who we are, letting them know what we're here for. And it's for everyone's benefit and to move the city forward.
Correct me if I'm
thank
wrong,
you.
but bringing in the third party to present, I think it's a good idea. But like you mentioned, like, yeah, I think we should definitely be present at those forums and available for questions after the forum. In addition, going to our district, our city council districts meetings, if they have a monthly or bi-monthly, whatever it is, I think we need to start communicating with our city council member in our ward and being present at their meetings as well.
Yeah. I think all of that makes sense. And so real quick, so it sounds like we have some general consensus to ask staff to come back at our next meeting with additional information on more information on a survey, more information on public forums, and then more information on a third-party facilitator. And I just want to make a comment on the facilitator part of this, because this is not a consultant that you would think of like a land use consultant. There are professional facilitators that exist, and professional facilitators are just that. They're there to facilitate a meeting. They're not there to provide their own comments or input or opinions. It's really, their job is to deal with, is to just, facilitate the meeting so it can be fair, objective, and move along without providing their own opinions. And I think that's the part that I really feel strongly about. I mean, I'm all for us being accessible to the community and going out to your own neighborhood associations and saying, I'm Casey Daly and this is my opinion, but I don't want somebody else, and, no disrespect to anybody, but I don't want somebody else going and speaking on behalf of the charter committee if they're part of the charter committee. I would prefer that if the charter committee is going to be speaking, somebody's going to be representing us, that it's done in an objective way. And I just, I don't see any way, as much as we all try, right? And I'm not saying that we're not going to be able to try, but I look, man, I've lived in the city for over 20 years, and I know people have opinions and people feel strongly about certain things. And if you give them a microphone and you put them in front of an audience, they're going to make their opinion known. And that concerns me when we're talking about the constitution of our city. And that's really where I'm coming from on it. So,
Well, I would just say that then it's incumbent on us as a collective committee to hold the chair accountable to ensuring that they're objective in that process and not pursuing their personal agenda. I think that's a key part of that. But I think that, as Corey mentioned, the chair does have a representative role to the public, and they should be certainly authorized to speak on the progress that we're making as a committee. And obviously, if they put their personal bias into it, which everyone has our bias, but it's incumbent on us to be that check on it. Just like the mayor and council have their checks and powers, we got to be the check on the chair.
all right, we're at 8:01. So, do we have consensus for what we talked about as far as public surveys and third-party consultant and forum? Consensus? All right, wonderful. Congratulations, everybody. We made it to the end of the meeting. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, that was second. Motion and second. We are adjourned. Our next regularly scheduled meeting will be May 27, 2026. And full disclosure, that is my birthday, and I may not be here.
I was just going to mention, that's what, Labor Day weekend?
It is.
So do we want to change the date a week ahead or a week later?
Do we want,
Or
or
do
do
we
we
want
want to
to
just
skip-
push it to June?
Do we want to?
I'm down with June.
You want to push it to June? I mean,
I'd like to meet in May just because of the budget timeline. So I'd be open to meeting on the 20th if that's possible.
Since we already adjourned, we can't have this discussion because we just adjourned the meeting.
Nobody motioned, did they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, did
Yeah.
you?
There was a motion
Dang,
and a
Ricky,
second.
you're on it, man.
I banged my fist too.
Yeah.
He said 8:01.
But what I can, what
We
I
can
can
do surveys through
yes,
the
I can
email
survey
survey.
the group to make sure that we have a quorum for the 27th. I can do that early, and we can identify a future date that works for everybody. So,
Would that be a future date after May or before?
I know, but people.
I can
tell
give
me to take off that
options
week, 'cause Monday's a
and
holiday.
see what the consensus is for a May meeting or a late May meeting or early June meeting, whatever
You
works
shouldn't
best.
have a birthday. We need to cancel his birthday.
So
Or
look-
you bring the cake, Casey.
So look for an email from me. Look out for an email from me later next week for May.
All right.